You did everything right. You followed the exact blueprint that was handed to you from the moment you could understand words. You went to the right places. You sat in the right chairs. You gave the right answers. You built the career that people respect. You maintained the relationships that society told you to value. You bought things you were supposed to buy. You became completely, flawlessly dependable. You became predictable. You became the person everyone can rely on when their own world gets heavy. By every measurable standard of modern society, your life is working perfectly. People look at you and they see success. They see stability. They see someone who has finally figured it all out. And yet, there is something underneath all of it that simply will not quiet down. It is not loud enough to be a complete crisis. It is not visible enough to explain to anyone without sounding completely ungrateful. It is just a persistent low hum of wrongness, a constant quiet ache in the background of your mind, a sense that you are living slightly beside yourself, that the person going through the motions of your daily life is you, but not quite all of you. You wake up in the morning before the alarm even finishes its first ring. You look at the ceiling in the dark, and before your feet even touch the floor, you feel it, the weight. You have tried to logic your way out of it for years. You have told yourself that you are just stressed right now. You have told yourself that this is just a difficult quarter, a difficult month, a difficult season. You have told yourself that other people have it much worse, so you have absolutely no right to complain. You have tried to convince yourself that this is just how adult life feels, that everyone feels this tired, that everyone feels this hollow. But no matter how many times you rationalize it, the feeling remains. You are exhausted. But it is not an exhaustion you can sleep off.
You can sleep for 10 solid hours, wake up on a Saturday morning and feel just as drained as you did on Friday night. Because your exhaustion is not physical. It is something much deeper. It is something much heavier. You are fighting a brutal, silent internal civil war, and you don't even realize you're on the battlefield. Think about the drive home from work. You park in your driveway or your garage. You turn off the engine, but you don't get out of the car immediately. You sit there in the silence for 5, maybe 10 minutes, staring at the dashboard. Why do you do that? You do that because you are gathering the psychic energy required to walk through the front door. You are gathering the energy to put the armor back on. Swiss physician and psychotherapist Dr. Paul Tournier dedicated his clinical life to observing this exact phenomenon. He sat in rooms with highly successful, highly functional people who looked perfectly healthy on paper, but who felt entirely dead inside. Dr. Paul Tournier observed that modern human suffering, chronic anxiety, and low-grade depression do not stem simply from a lack of discipline. They do not come from biological flaws. They do not come from a failure to optimize your time or manage your calendar. They come from a war fought between two entities within every single human being. The personage, which is the mask, and the person, which is the true self. Let us look very closely at the mask. The personage is the external facade. It is the socially acceptable version of ourselves. Think back to when you were young. You learned very quickly which behaviors earned you praise. You learned which behaviors earned you punishment, silence, or isolation. You learned what made people smile at you and what made them turn away in disappointment. To survive, you began to build. To be loved, you constructed a shell. To avoid rejection and to function in society, you built an armor. You built a version of yourself that the world would seamlessly accept. And there is absolutely nothing inherently wrong with this. Building a personage is natural and completely necessary for social interaction. You cannot walk through the world entirely exposed. You need a professional face for the office. You need a polite face for the cashier at the grocery store. You need a composed face when dealing with difficult strangers.
However, the tragedy of modern life is over-identification. You have spent so much energy polishing the mask that you have completely forgotten it is a mask. You think the armor is your actual skin. You have become terrified that if the mask slips even for a fraction of a second, you will be unloved and unprotected. You believe that if people saw the machinery underneath the performance, they would leave you. So you never take it off, not even when you are alone in your own house, not even when you look in the mirror. This personage has very specific, easily identifiable characteristics. It is highly reactive. It is entirely predictable. It is hyper-focused on external validation. The mask is obsessed with productivity. It constantly needs to prove its worth through output, through favors, through being useful to others. It is completely terrified of judgment, and because of this terror, the personage is constantly, endlessly performing. Every email you send is a performance. Every text message is carefully drafted, deleted, and redrafted to ensure you sound perfectly accommodating. Every conversation is a real-time calculation of what the other person wants to hear. Watch yourself in a meeting. You nod when you don't agree. You force a laugh at a joke that isn't funny just to keep the social lubrication flowing. You say yes to an entirely unreasonable deadline just to maintain the image of the reliable professional. And then, when the camera turns off or the door closes, your shoulders slump. Your face falls. You are drained of life force. But the mask does not just operate at work. It infects your most intimate spaces. Dr. Paul Tournier understood that the most tragic casualties of the personage are our closest relationships. You perform for your partner. You perform for your friends. You hide your actual fears because you don't want to be a burden. You suppress your real anger because you don't want to cause a scene. You have become a masterpiece of adaptation. You fit into any room. You mirror the energy of anyone you talk to. But when the room empties and the conversation ends, you are left with nothing but an echoing void. Because nobody in that room was actually talking to you. They were talking to your representative. And beneath all of this frantic, exhausting performance lies the other entity, the person, the true self, the hidden depth. The person is the authentic, unvarnished, raw, and vulnerable self beneath the armor. It is the part of you that holds your genuine desires. It holds your real fears. It holds your honest boundaries. And most importantly, it holds your true capacity for deep, meaningful connection. But because the true self is vulnerable, because it is unpolished and raw, we bury it. We lock it in the darkest, most inaccessible room of our psychological house. We starve it to feed the personage. Every time you swallow your true opinion to keep the peace, you are starving the person to feed the mask. Every time you ignore your own exhaustion to help someone who constantly uses you, you are starving the person to feed the mask. Every time you apologize when you did absolutely nothing wrong, you are stripping away a piece of your true self to polish the armor. You think you're being a good person, you think you're being selfless, but clinically speaking, you are committing a slow psychological suicide. And here is the brutal reality that Dr. Paul Tournier mapped out. The person cannot be destroyed. You cannot kill your true self. It can only be repressed. And when it is repressed for too long, when it is starved and ignored and locked away in the dark, it begins to fight back. It begins to rebel against the dictatorship of the mask. When a human being lives entirely from the personage, ignoring the person, the psyche creates a psychological pressure cooker. The tension between who you pretend to be and who you actually are has nowhere to go. It builds, it expands, it looks for an exit strategy, and eventually it manifests physically and emotionally. This is the somatic cost of your lifelong performance. The body speaks when the mind refuses to. That unexplainable exhaustion you feel every single day, you feel chronically tired, not because of physical labor, but because sustaining a fake persona takes a staggering amount of psychic energy. Imagine carrying a heavy, lead-lined porcelain mask in front of your face for 16 hours a day. Imagine the sheer muscular effort required to never let your arm drop. That is what your mind is doing. every single second of every single day. That is why you are tired. Your brain is running a massive, invisible background program just to ensure you don't slip up and show who you really are. Then comes the low-grade depression. You look around at your life. You might even have everything you ever wanted: the job, the house, the relationship, the respect of your peers. But you feel entirely empty because the you experiencing the success is just the mask. The true self is not invited to the celebration. The true self is still locked in the basement, starving in the dark. The accolades belong to the armor. The money belongs to the armor. The compliments are directed at the armor. Nothing reaches the skin underneath. And when the mind is trapped in this pressure cooker, the body intervenes forcefully. You start experiencing somatic symptoms. You feel a persistent tight tension in your neck and shoulders that no massage, no stretching, and no medication can ever permanently cure. Your breathing becomes shallow. You exist in a state of low-level fight or flight all day long, waiting for the moment your cover is blown. Your digestive system acts up. Your sleep becomes fragmented. And then comes the weekend dread. You experience sudden anxiety spikes on Sunday evenings. You feel a crushing weight on your chest as Monday approaches. You think it is just stress about your workload or your inbox. You think you just hate your job. But these are not malfunctions. These physical symptoms are distress signals from the true self. Your body is violently rejecting the life your mask has built. Your biology is trying to force you to drop the performance before the performance literally kills you. If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. The greatest tragedy of this entire dynamic is the complete illusion of self-knowledge. Most people confuse knowing their personage with knowing their person. If someone asks you who you are, you will likely list the attributes of your mask. You know your opinions, you know your career goals, you know your favorite shows, you know your political affiliations, your hobbies, your preferred brand of coffee, but you have absolutely no idea who is actually driving the car. You believe your reactions are conscious choices. You believe you are in control of the vehicle. But Dr. Tournier's clinical framework exposes a much darker reality. Most of your choices are not choices at all. They are just automatic defense mechanisms of the mask. You think you are being generous, but your mask is just terrified of being disliked. You think you are being driven and ambitious, but your mask is just terrified of being seen as a failure. You think you are being easygoing and chill, but your mask is just terrified of engaging in conflict. You are not making choices. You are executing a survival program written decades ago by a child who was just trying to feel safe. You are a stranger living inside your own mind, completely disconnected from your core. And this disconnection is the silent, invisible source of your misery. So, how does the war end? How do you relieve the psychological pressure cooker before it explodes? The path to authenticity is not what society tells you it is. The solution is not a productivity hack. You cannot optimize your way out of a fragmented psyche. You cannot cure a starving true self by waking up at 5 a.m., taking ice baths, or downloading a new habit tracker. The solution is much harder than that. The solution is the terrifying process of dropping the mask. It is the conscious, deliberate, agonizing decision to stop performing, to stop calculating, to stop feeding the armor. And make no mistake, this process will require an immense amount of courage. It requires the courage to be completely misunderstood. Because when you finally take off the mask, the world will react, and the reaction will not be gentle. The people around you are entirely used to your personage. They are used to your compliance. They are used to your endless, uncomplaining availability. They are used to you carrying their emotional weight without ever asking for anything in return. When you drop the mask, you will begin to set boundaries. You will begin to say no. You will begin to express your actual, unvarnished opinions, even when they contradict the room. and this will cause immediate, uncomfortable friction. It requires disappointing people who only loved your personage. This is the hardest, most brutal truth to swallow in this entire journey. Many of the people in your life do not love your person. They love your utility. They love what you provide for them. They love the peace you maintain by silencing yourself.
They love that you are a mirror that never asks them to look at their own flaws. When you step into authenticity, those people will become angry. They will accuse you of being selfish. They will tell you that you have changed, that you are acting weird, that you are no longer the person they knew and loved. And they are absolutely right. You are no longer the artificial construct they relied on. You are becoming real. And reality is deeply inconvenient for people who only want to use you. Taking off the mask means sitting in the uncomfortable silence. It means not rushing to fill the void with people-pleasing chatter. It means finally listening to the internal friction instead of numbing it with endless distractions, scrolling, or working late. When you feel the urge to perform, you must sit with the agonizing anxiety of doing nothing. When you feel the terror of judgment, you must let it wash over you without frantically putting the armor back on. You must learn to tolerate the feeling of not being liked by everyone. This is not a dramatic, cinematic transformation. This process should not be described as a magical cure. You will not suddenly wake up floating on a cloud of self-love and eternal peace. It is a sober, mature, and entirely necessary maturation of the human psyche. It is the quiet, daily, unglamorous discipline of choosing your true self over the comfort of the mask. It will be painful. It will be intensely lonely for a while. You will lose the false connections that were built entirely on your performance. You will outgrow environments that required you to stay small. But what you gain is something no one can ever take away from you. You gain sovereignty over your own existence. You stop being a ghost haunting your own life. You stop being a functional machine, and you become a living, breathing human being. This is the heavy price of freedom. You must let the false version of yourself die so the real you can finally, truly breathe. Look at your life today. Look at the quiet exhaustion deep in your bones. Look at the tension in your shoulders that never leaves. Are you willing to carry that heavy, suffocating mask for the rest of your life? Are you willing to reach the end of your days having never actually lived as you? Or are you finally ready to face the silence? Are you ready to be misunderstood by the world so you can finally be understood by yourself? The internal civil war ends the moment you stop defending the illusion. Write in the comments, "I choose to take off the mask."